Hello, my name is Ivan Volkov. What you're about to hear is my side of the story of the popular event, the Russian sleep experiment. You can choose to believe me, or you can choose not to. The choice is yours. So my story begins in Moscow. I live in a medium-sized apartment with my wife and 3 children. We live a pretty quiet and simple life. But all of that completely changed when we heard on the radio that we were going to war with Germany. Everything would change. Our living quarters, our meals that we would eat together, our daily lives completely getting stricken away before our very eyes. One day, I come home from work. I get a letter in the mail saying that I have been drafted into the quote, Red Army. I'll be honest, I was pretty terrified. But as a husband and father, it was my duty. My first day at the training camp actually wasn't bad. I could tell that almost everyone there was terrified. And suddenly, a squad captain came up to me at my bunk with a letter in his hand. He told me that it was an urgent message from a group of researchers doing some experiments with prisoners from Germany. I didn't think much of it at first, but it kinda got to me after a while, knowing that I was a studying chemist at the time. When I arrived at the research facility, I wasn't prepared for the nightmare that would ensue. The research commander told me that they were performing chemical experiments on prisoners of war. As I enter the experimental chamber room, I see 5 prisoners lined up in front of the gas chamber. They seemed calm and at peace, and it really shocked me knowing that the research commander falsely promised their freedom after the experiment was finished. As they entered the chamber, the research commander finally told me the whole purpose of the experiment. He told me that the prisoners were going to be set in the chamber for the next 30 days with no sleep. The chamber would be filled with an experimental gas that would keep them awake for the entirety of the experiment. Trust me, I didn't want to be there. For the first 5 days, everything was normal. The prisoners were just talking to each other like normally. The researchers didn't want the lights on for the next few days. On the 15th day, all of us heard screaming, incredibly loud screaming. So loud that one of the prisoners' vocal cords was torn. Their behavior was devilish, evil, and inhumane. The researchers recommended turning off the gas, but then the prisoners cried out that they didn't want the gas to turn off. As we entered the chamber, most of the prisoners resorted to cannibalism, self-mutilation, and severe disembowelment. We couldn't believe our eyes. The military officials recommended that we keep the prisoners in the chamber because without the gas, they would die within seconds. Then out of nowhere, the commander ordered 3 of us to be placed inside the chamber with the remaining 3 prisoners. Suddenly, one of the researchers shot the commander in the head. I honestly thought I was next. But then, he ended up shooting one of the prisoners as well. As there was only 1 prisoner left, I explained that I would not allow myself to be locked in a room with monsters that could no longer be called people. I desperately asked what the subject was, to which the subject smiled and identified himself and the other fallen subjects as an inherent evil inside the human mind that is kept in check by the act of sleeping. Unfortunately, I had no choice. I had to shoot the prisoner in the heart. Then, when I leaned down to see if he was dead, he muttered the words, "So nearly free." I escaped with my life that night, and I will never forget how cruel men can be to one another.